Good morning again, this church. I'm glad I made it up here this morning. It's awesome to see all the baptisms this morning. 9 people baptized this morning. Isn't that awesome? Just an awesome way to start off service. We go back in the changing room after baptism. We all change into our clothes and everything, and then we can't get the door open to come out. So we're stuck back there for a little bit. I had to call Hilton to come and push on the door because none of us could pull it open. But we all made it out. And we're all here, a little more rushed than we thought, but we thought we were going to be locked in the changing room. So glad we made it out this morning. Look, these past few weeks, we have been discussing the 3 A's, right? The 3 A's. 2 weeks ago, Hilton spoke about apathy. Last week, Adam tackled anxiety. And today, I want to speak with you about addiction. Apathy, anxiety, and addiction. First, what is addiction, right? The actual definition of addiction is when you have a strong physical or psychological need or urge to do something or use something to the point where it could be harmful to you. That is the definition of addiction. So the question is, what is that for you? What is that for you? What is something that you have a strong physical or psychological need or urge to do something or use something to the point where it could be harmful to you? Maybe something pops in your head right away. Maybe for some of us, like it's easy. It's like, I know what it is right away. It pops in your head right away. Or maybe we really have to explore that to find it. Either way, it is important for us to be aware of these things, whether they are obvious to us or whether they are hidden. And that's what we want to dive into today. That's what we want to move into today. How can we biblically tackle our addictions? We've looked at apathy. We've looked at anxiety. And now we want to look at how we can biblically tackle our addictions today. It's first important for us to know what causes addictions. There are a lot of reasons why addictions begin. It could be because of the way something makes you feel, both physically or mentally. It could be a high that we experience after taking something or doing something, which can develop into a habit. Being addicted to something means that not having it causes withdrawal, which is unpleasant. So it's easier to carry on having or doing what we crave, and this cycle just continues, right? We just fall into this trap of this addiction that it's just easier to just do it than refrain from it. Often, addiction gets out of hand because we need more and more to satisfy that craving. There are several obvious addictions that are bad for us that we could talk about today, like nicotine or tobacco, which 1.3 billion deaths are connected to tobacco annually. 1.3 billion. We could talk about alcohol, which scientifically is linked to 60 different types of diseases. We could talk about illegal or prescription drugs, which are very easy to get addicted to, as we all know. We could talk about gambling, which is easier now and more legal now than ever. We could talk about porn, which is more accessible now than it ever has been before. You know that God tells us in Ephesians 5:15, he says, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. We should be careful how we live, not as unwise, but as wise. And we can all say, being addicted to these things that I just mentioned, doing these things are not living wise. It's not a wise way to live, to be addicted to these obvious things that we know are harmful to us and to our bodies. And God talks about that as living wisely and not unwisely. But several of us become addicted to these things, and we live unwisely through these things. But what about the not so obvious addictions? Maybe things that aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, but can be a problem for us. Like according to some websites, this one's going to hit home, guys. According to some websites, the number one addiction is coffee. Uh-oh. I just struck a nerve with a lot of people. Coffee. It's the number one addiction, according to some websites. In and of itself, coffee is not necessarily bad. My wife keeps trying to make me drink it, and I'm not a huge fan, but it's the number one addiction according to some websites. Or what about food? I heard some people say food. Food's great, right? We love food, right? Or what about your work, adults? Your work can become addicting sometimes. Some of us get addicted to our work and we don't realize it sometimes. We become enthralled with it, right? It starts to define who we are sometimes and what we do sometimes. So work is one of those maybe hidden addictions that we don't fall in the trap. Kids, what about video games? Oh, we can become addicted to video games. It's not just kids anymore. It's not just teenagers. It's not just middle schoolers and high schoolers. It's possibly our 20s and our 30s, and we become addicted to these video games. We spend hours and hours and hours in these video games. Or what about our social media? What about when our social media starts to run our lives and social media starts to control what we think and our social media starts to just really, really control everything we do in our lives and we're addicted to it and we don't realize it? Or what about this? Adam spoke briefly about this last week. A device that we can almost do any of these things on, right? You want to look at your social media? Here you go. You got it on your hands 24/7 to check out your social media. Want to play video games? You can do it on this. Right? You want to order food? You can order food. You want to gamble? You can gamble right here. You want to watch porn? It's right on here. So many things that we can do with these. And it's easy to become addicted to these devices that we carry around nonstop. Now, don't get me wrong. Phones are awesome. Like, they're great. We can do so many good things on them. We can get so many things accomplished on them. We are more, hopefully, productive today because of these and not less productive. But my concern is maybe it's the opposite. The convenience of them are amazing. I mean, we can communicate to anyone at any time, almost whenever we want. We tell the youth all the time, when I was their age, I had this thing that hung on the wall in my bedroom. And it would ring, and when it rang, there were these things in the house that would ring at the same time. So mine in my bed would ring, and then the one in the kitchen would ring, and then another bedroom would ring. Mine would even light up when it rang. All right? And then, think back, you had to answer and say hello, and you had no clue who was calling. You didn't know who was calling. And on the other side, when you called somebody, you didn't know who was going to pick up. Right? Well, some of us remember back in, our maybe high school days or whatever, we would have to call when we wanted to talk to, a girl or a boy of the opposite sex, and you had to talk to the parents first and say, hey, is so-and-so here? Right? They have no idea what that's like, right? And then I thought it was really cool when I got a cord that would reach all the way around my room. I could go anywhere in my room and talk to somebody. This was amazing. And then we got this thing called call waiting, right? When you called somebody back in the day, guys, you'd hear this beep, 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 beep. That means somebody was on the phone. But then you had call waiting, so you didn't have to miss any phone calls anymore. Unless the person that was talking on the phone didn't answer the call waiting, right? Then we moved on to this cordless phone. And you could go anywhere in your house and talk to somebody. Man, it was awesome. That was really, really cool. We've come a long ways, haven't we, guys? We've come a long ways. Times are much different now, aren't they? A lot different. But just like many worldly things, if not used correctly, this device can be harmful to us. And it can get in the way of accomplishing what God wants us to accomplish for him. I'm afraid that happens too often. Like, here's what's concerning about the phone. Hear me with this. Like I said, I could have spent a little more time on some of those other things that are obviously not helpful to us. But here's what I think, and we see it a lot in the youth group. I think we have teenagers. I think we have middle schoolers and high schoolers everywhere that are addicted to their phones. And here's the scary thing. Us as parents, we don't realize it because we're addicted as well. And that's the scary thing. Here's why I say this. Listen to these stats about teen cell phone use. All right, we're talking about just teen cell phone use. 59% of parents feel their teens are addicted to their phones. 59% of parents. 78% of teens check their phones at least hourly. Every hour they're checking their phones, almost 80%. 72% of teens feel an urgent need to immediately respond to text messages. 77% of parents feel their teens get distracted by their phones. 44% of teens use their phones at the dinner table. Almost half use their phones at the dinner table. Now, these are teen stats. Here's the thing, though. I would not be surprised or shocked if the adult stats were very similar. If us as adults were very similar. Now, let me hit some more stats that are just at home to us here today. Here are some more stats that are very alarming because these come directly from this group of teenagers. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows deep this morning. Here's these stats. You ready? Are you aware that some of these youth are on their phones more than 9 hours a day? There's 12 hours in a day, guys. Some of these youth, not youth in general, some of these people are using their phone over 9 hours a day. This isn't in Salem. This isn't in Roanoke. This isn't in Virginia. This is these guys right here. How do we know that? We checked their screen time this morning. You know what? We checked all their screen times this morning for a week. And here you go. The average time for our youth on their phones, 5 hours, 22 minutes. That should be alarming to us. That's almost half the day. That's almost half of 12 hours in the day. Do you know you can go to your child's phone and hit settings and go to screen time and check what their screen time is? Do you know you can do that? Now, look, this would be great if we knew that, hey, they're constantly listening to godly podcasts. They're constantly listening to Christian music. They're doing their devotions on their Bible app, but let's get real. I'm afraid that's not the case with what's going on. In fact, parents, when's the last time you checked your child's screen time? In fact, when is the last time you checked your screen time? Because it's really simple to do. Looking at all these addictions, all right? Looking at all these addictions, where do you struggle? Where do you struggle? For some of you, it may be your phone. But for others of you, it may be something that we've mentioned already, like alcohol or drugs or porn or your work or any of those things, or maybe something that we haven't mentioned yet, that you're just fully aware, I have a problem with this. I'm addicted to this. I can't stop doing this. Wherever you fall is where I want you to explore this morning. What if I said this? What if I said it's okay to be addicted? That could be kind of controversial. What if we decided, though, to take our addictions and reframe them? What if we were able to reframe our addictions? We reframed them in a way that brought us closer to Christ? What if we were able to do that? What if we made a decision to be addicted to Jesus? What if that was our choice? To allow Jesus to replace our addictions. We allow him to take the place of our current addictions today. Because here's the thing, until we get things right with him, addictions will always be a problem for us. If it's not one thing, then it's going to be another. You may defeat this addiction over here, but then there's going to be another addiction over here. And you may defeat this one over here, but there's going to be another addiction over here. Because if Jesus isn't filling us, guys, if Jesus isn't filling us, we will look for something else too. So it all starts with him. If we can just be addicted to Jesus, if we can replace our addiction with Jesus, then we have something that doesn't need to be filled up. He takes this place inside of us that is only meant for him. And we can stop looking in the world to fill this spot inside of us because he will fill it for us. But how? How? How do we do this? How do we become addicted to Jesus? This morning, I'm going to look at 3 steps. 3 steps that sound easy, but are much harder than you think. And take discipline and commitment on your part. But I mean, doesn't anything worth anything take those things? You got to have some commitment. You got to have some discipline, right? You have to have commitment and discipline if you're going to maximize your success in anything at life. The same is true with your relationship with Jesus. If you want to maximize that relationship with Jesus, you have to choose to be disciplined and committed to him. So here we go. Step 1. Step 1. You need to figure out what your addictions are. And they could be different for all of us. And they're going to be different. We're all going to struggle with different things. We're all going to have different interests. We're all going to have different temptations sometimes. And we're going to have to decipher those and figure out, where do our addictions fall? What are our addictions? Maybe for some of you, it's things that are going to harm you. Maybe some of you struggle with some of the things that that I mentioned earlier, like alcohol or porn or drugs or things like that. Maybe for some of you, it's things that, like we talked about, that aren't necessarily harmful in and of themselves, but we consume them so much that we become addicted to them, like your mobile device or your social media or your work or whatever it may be. It may be different for all of us, but number 1 step is we got to figure out what our addictions are. In 1 Corinthians 6:12, it says, I have the right to do anything. I have the right as a human being to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to sit on my device for 8 hours a day. I'm not sure if that's beneficial, though. I have the right to just be enthralled with my work for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I don't know if that's the most beneficial thing or not. Right? I have a right, you say, to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. What are we being mastered by today? Is this our master? Is your social media account your master? Is alcohol your master? If it is, that's a problem. That's a problem. So step 1 is we've got to figure out what our addictions are. Step 2, we then begin, once we figure those out, we then begin to replace our addictions with Jesus. See, when you feel compelled to fall into that addiction, whatever it may be for you, you make a pre-planned choice to fall into Jesus instead. Maybe for you, when you feel tempted to do whatever that addiction is, you've got to come up with a plan ahead of time. I'm feeling tempted to do this. I'm feeling tempted to fall into this addiction. So here's what I'm going to do instead. So if maybe for you, it is a certain Bible verse that you just go to. and you just read. Maybe it's a book in the Bible. You just pick it up and you start reading. Instead of succumbing to that temptation, succumbing to that addiction, you just pick up your Bible and you start reading some verses that you have pre-planned out that will help you. Maybe for you, it's a prayer that you can go to. Maybe it's a prayer that you've written out that you can just say and go to. Or in your head, you just start talking to Jesus when that addiction comes, when that temptation comes. Maybe it's a particular song that you just play over and over and over. Don't you love it when a godly song gets stuck in your head and it's there all day long? Maybe it's a song that you can go to that when, hey, I'm tempted to do this. I'm tempted to fall into this addiction. I'm going to play this song. I'm going to put this song on. Maybe it's another Christ-following friend or spouse or family member. Maybe it's a certain devotional you go to that you have pre-planned out that you can look at when you feel tempted to fall into that addiction. Maybe it's a podcast you can put on that you play over and over and over that'll help you not succumb to that addiction. Or maybe it's something else that brings you back to Jesus. But what is it for you? We've got to, if we're going to defeat addiction, we've got to make a plan to do so. If you're going to accomplish things in life, you have to make plans to do so. It's the same thing with our addictions. We have to make plans to do so. And we do that by one, realizing what our addictions are, and then two, planning out where to go to when those addictions tempt us. When we're tempted to drink that drink, or tempted to use that drug, or tempted to look at this on our computer, or tempted to pick this up and scroll through for mindless hours. When we're tempted to do these things, what can we do instead? And that's got to be your go-to. So one, you have to realize what your addictions are. Two, you have to begin to replace your addictions with Jesus. In James 4, it tells us, submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. We must submit our lives to God. When that temptation, that addiction comes, can we submit ourselves to God by putting on that podcast, by reading our Bible, by talking to Him, by doing some of these things that we've suggested? What works for you? What brings you closer to Jesus? Romans 13:14 says, rather, I love this, clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ. Put on Jesus. Clothe yourself. Submit yourself. Put Jesus on you, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. So when they come, we just clothe ourselves. We put on Jesus. We cover ourselves in Jesus. We clothe ourselves with Jesus and do not think of how to gratify our desires of the flesh. And that's how we do that. This addiction's right here. It's time to go to the podcast that I've got pre-planned. This addiction's right here. It's time to open the Word and read what I need to read. This addiction's right here. It's time to read that prayer that I read out ahead of time. You've got to pre-plan how to defeat addictions. It doesn't just happen. It's not just, I'm just going to stop doing it. It's still there. You have to overcome that. So one, you have to know what your addictions are. Two, you have to begin to replace your addictions with Jesus. And then step three, consistently be dedicated to this process. You've got to consistently be dedicated to this process. So many of us will plan something out, do it once, and then do away with it. And it doesn't work that way. If we have goals in life, we have things we want to accomplish, there's a process you have to go to achieve those goals. If you have a goal of defeating an addiction, there's a process you have to go through and be committed to defeat that addiction. It's the same thing. See, we all must make choices, and we will reap the consequences of those choices at some point. We've got to consistently be dedicated to the process. Like I said earlier, that's what it takes for anything worth anything in life. You want to accomplish something, you want to be successful in your workplace, you got to be committed and dedicated. You want to be a good husband or be a good father, good mother, you got to be a good wife, you got to be committed and dedicated. That's how life works. In James 1:12-15 tells us, blessed is the one who perseveres. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. Blessed is the one who perseveres under temptation. Blessed is the one who perseveres when that addiction comes and we stand strong. We stand fast in Jesus. Because having stood the test, that person will receive a crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be one. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. But going back, blessed is the one who perseveres. See, when we decide to put Jesus instead of our addictions, when we decide to put Jesus in our life instead of falling into temptation or and our addictions, we're going to be blessed. God's going to bless us for that. God, I'm not going to do this now because I know I have a problem with it. I'm coming to you instead. God's going to bless you for that. He's going to bring you closer to him. But we've got to be disciplined enough. We've got to be dedicated enough in the process to do that. Is it hard? Yep. It also says in Proverbs 25:28, like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. How much self-control do we have? How much self-control do we have? So how do we reframe our addictions to become addicted to Jesus? One, we got to figure out what our addictions are. Two, we've got to begin to replace our addictions with Jesus. And then three, we've got to consistently be dedicated in this process. And it's like, those are the three steps that we've got to take to replace our addiction with Jesus. Now, here are three truths that come along with this. There's three truths, and these aren't long. These are very simple. And I just mentioned one of them. Number one, it won't be easy. Guys, it's not going to be easy. No one ever said following Christ was going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. It takes commitment on your part. Jesus tells us in John 16:33, John 16:33 says, this is Jesus talking here, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Times will come in trouble. Times will come of heartache. Times will come where you struggle. Times where trouble will come. But take heart. I have overcome the world. See, this process sounds easy. Oh, okay. I just got to figure out what my addictions are. Then I just got to replace them with Jesus. So I've got to plan that ahead a little bit. And then I've just got to be committed to that process. That sounds pretty simple, pretty easy, but ultimately, it's not. Because some of our addictions have overcome us so much that they're so strong and they're so powerful. And some of us are in this place where we can't do this on our own. That's why we must go to Jesus. Only he can take some of these addictions away from us. We can only do it through his power, because through our own we can't. And that's not easy sometimes. That's not easy. So number one, this process won't be easy. Second truth, it will be worth it. Without a doubt, it will be worth it. Because here's the thing, church, catch this. The productivity that will come to your life will allow God to use you in ways you could have never imagined before. I'm telling you, if you stick to this process and you begin to replace your addictions with Jesus, the productivity that he is going to use you for his kingdom will be far bigger, far better than you could have ever imagined in your life before. He will begin to use you in ways you have never imagined before. So ultimately, if you can be dedicated to him, if you can stick to this process, if you can start to replace your addictions with Jesus and become addicted to you, he's going to do things in your life that you never imagined before and you never saw coming. It will be worth it. It will absolutely, 100% be worth it. He will start to impact people through you that you would never believe before would have been impacted. He will start to use you in your workplaces and in your schools like you never believed before could be done. He will start to use you to impact other people in your family that you thought never would ever come to Jesus and like you ever thought would happen. He will start to move you places and different positions and different areas that you never thought you would be before and start to use you to impact other people for Him. So one, it's going to be tough. And two, it's going to be worth it. Jeremiah 30:17 says, "But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord." Psalms 147:3 says, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Some of us today are in this addiction and it's destroying us. It's killing us. We don't know how to get out. It's controlling our lives. And maybe it's an addiction that you didn't realize you had until this morning, or maybe it's an addiction that you've had for a long time, and you know it is just picking apart your life. You got to turn that addiction into Jesus. You got to give that over to Him. And it may be hard, and it will be hard in the short run, but it will be worth it in the long run. The third truth, you may need help in this process. You may need help. I've already said, for some of us, we are unable on our own to defeat this addiction. We are unable on our own to overcome this desire. So you may need help in the process. For you, it may be a friend that you need, or a family member that you need, or some of us may need professional help. You may have an addiction that you have and you're so far down the line that you need professional help to overcome it. Seek that help. Seek that professional help. Seek that family member that can help you, that really good godly friend that can help you. Seek those people out. You don't have to do it all on your own. The Bible tells us in Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. We should carry each other's burdens, help each other out. You're not meant to overcome maybe that addiction by yourself. You may need to reach out to someone else to help you overcome that. Don't be afraid to do that. If you're struggling with something this morning that you know you're addicted to, don't be afraid to come find one of us pastors after church. And if you need professional help, we can guide you in the right direction to get that help. Is that hard? That may be hard for you to do. It may be hard for you to admit that I have a problem right here. May not be, you may have to put your pride aside a little bit and say, I know I have a problem and I need help overcoming it. There are plenty of godly, professional help people out here that can help you and want to help you. So one, it's not going to be easy. That's one truth that comes with this process. The second truth is it will be worth it in the long run, guys. God will use you in ways you never thought before, in ways that you never thought He would. He will use you. It will be worth it. And then number three, you may need to get help in the process. You may need to seek help in the process. Look, Paul was Saul at one time. And his sole job was to go around and kill Christians. He was addicted to killing Christians. That was his mission in life, finding Christians and killing them. But then he met Jesus on that road. And his addiction was replaced with Christ. And Saul became Paul and started planting churches and became the very opposite of what he was before, because he replaced his addiction with Jesus. If he can do that, if Jesus can do that with Paul, whatever your addiction is, he can do the same for you. You just start replacing your addiction with Jesus and your world will change dramatically. Because it's going to be more about Him than about anything else. Look, Matthew was addicted to taking people's money as a tax collector. And probably in ways that probably weren't great. He loved taking people's money as a tax collector. But then he met Jesus and became addicted to following Him. The woman at the well was addicted to inappropriate relationships. Couldn't stop having inappropriate relationships with guys. But then she encountered Jesus and her life was changed. Solomon had it all. He had it all. He had it all. He had the biggest house. If it was in today's times, he had the best cars. He had the best of everything. All the food you could want, all the things. He had it all, but nothing in the end could satisfy him. Only God could. In the end, guys, your worldly addictions won't satisfy you. Only Jesus can. It may get you through a week or a year or whatever it may be, but in the end, it's not going to totally fulfill you and satisfy you. Only Jesus can. And while you stay in that addiction, you are limiting God's opportunities to use you right here, right now. Is it because you're stubborn and you won't get out? Is it because you need professional help and you won't ask? Is it because whatever it may be? But the longer you stay into that addiction, you are limiting God's opportunities to use you to impact the people around you that He wants to impact. I'm going to have the praise team come. I'm going to wrap things up here. And I want to read you what God tells us in 1 John. 1 John 2:15-17 says, "Do not love the world or anything in the world." I'm going to say that one more time. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. See, we can't fall in love with our addictions. We can't fall in love with things that are controlling our lives if it's not Jesus. When we choose to do that, when we fall in love with the world, these worldly things, these addictions, that's not from our Father. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires, they pass away. But whoever does the will of God lives forever. We were just talking to the youth this morning about living water and about how as human beings, we need water to survive. But then that water, works through our body and we need more water. And then we need more water. And we can't go a day or two without water or we won't survive. We need that water and we have to keep coming back to that water. But Jesus offers this living water that if we just submit to Him and give Him our lives, we don't have to keep going back and drinking. It's there with us always. And our thirst is filled forever. And the peace that comes within us lasts forever. And we talked to them a little bit about this morning that, one day you're going to live on this earth for 80, 90, 100 years, hopefully, something in that nature. I don't know, maybe 76, whatever it is. But then it's going to end. And then we're going to have an eternal world that we're going to live in. And this eternal world can only happen if you drink this living water that Jesus provides. This water, if you only submit your life to Him and you give your life to Him. And then for not hundreds of years, not thousands of years, not millions of years, but for all of time, more than we can ever even imagine, we'll spend eternity when we're done here, when He's done using us here with Him in heaven. But we only get a certain amount of time here. So are we allowing Him to impact others through us so other people can have that eternity, not thousands of years, but eternity with Him in heaven? Or are we allowing our addictions to limit the way He can use us? We've got to exchange our worldly addictions for Jesus. 2 questions you have to answer. What are your addictions, and are you willing to trade them for Jesus? You have to get things right with God before defeating any addiction, or one addiction will just turn into another. Last verse I'm going to read you this morning. Titus 2:11-13 says, "For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions. It teaches us to say no to our addictions, no to things that consume us that aren't healthy for us, no to things that are going to harm us. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. Not years from now, but right now, while we wait for the blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. How are you living today? Are your addictions limiting your opportunities that God can work in you now? Not later, now. That's the only question you can answer. And that's the question I want you to answer this morning. Here's what I'm going to ask. With every head bowed, every eye closed, the worship team just plays here in the background. I want to invite you up front this morning to this altar. Is there anything you need to bring to God this morning? Is there any addiction you may be struggling with this morning that maybe you didn't even realize until this morning? Guys, some of our youth in this church are on their phones more than 9 hours a day. Our average phone use time is over 5 hours a day. It's half the day. That can't be healthy. Maybe it is something you are struggling with today, or maybe you know someone that is struggling with something today. Maybe you are a parent today sitting here right now and know and are very aware that your child's phone use is out of control. I want you to bring that to God this morning. Parents, I want you to bring your children to God this morning with things that they struggle with. Only He can provide you or someone you know with true healing. Maybe this morning you don't know Jesus, so you can't replace that addiction with Him because you don't know Him. You saw the people be baptized before service. You've heard what I've been talking about up here, but you're sitting here thinking, what is He even? I don't even know this Jesus. Well, today can be the day where you come to know Jesus. Today can be the day that you can change your life and have something to replace your addictions with. Today can be the day you become addicted to Jesus. You just need to pray something like this in your own words. I can't do it for you. Only you can say it. You can say it right where you're sitting right now, right where you're watching online. You can just say this in your own words. Just say, God, I know I'm not perfect. Just say, I know I mess up and I'm a sinner. Forgive me of my sins, God. I believe that your Son Jesus died on the cross for my sins and rose 3 days later. I want to give you my life today. From this day forward, I want to live for you, Jesus. Take my life. I surrender it to you. If you're someone here today that said that prayer, if you're someone today that gave your life to Jesus, surrendered your life to Jesus, please let us know. Please let us know. Find any of us pastors after service and just let us know, because we want to follow that commitment up like you saw at the beginning of the service today with baptism. Baptism doesn't save you, but it's an expression of what Jesus has done in your life, and you're saying, everybody, I now follow Jesus. I'll now submit to Him. So if that's a decision you made today, we would love to know so we can pray for you and walk you through that process. For those of us that know Jesus, this altar is open. Come pray for something you're struggling with, or maybe come and pray for your kids that they don't struggle for something you're afraid they're struggling with. You can pray in your seats. But man, there's something powerful about coming to the altar and praying. So take this time right now and come do that, church. Come on, get up now and come pray and give things to Jesus that you need to give to Jesus. Or lift up your child or your spouse or someone else you know that struggles with something this morning. Come on, church, don't wait. Come on now.